The New York Knicks can, in fact, hang with contenders. They just couldn't quite put it away against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Winning streak versus winning streak. They went band for band, and unfortunately, OKC came out on top versus the Knicks, 117 to 107, when the offense kind of fell apart late. We're talking about it next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome into Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I'm Alex Wolf, I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And he's Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster, and the Saturday host of Locked On NBA. And your episode today is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I also want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks a part of your daily routine. Coming to you on a Saturday today because we decided to do the big fight. You know, a big Friday night fight going on with the Knicks and Thunder. We were like, you know what, let's adjust the schedule. But that way you never miss an episode. If you like and subscribe and hit the notification bell or the auto download function, you'll know when that fifth episode hits, whether it's Friday, whether it's Saturday, you always get a notification. So make sure you do that. Also, make sure you check out the Locked On Knicks newsletter, because your favorite podcast now has a newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Knicks Daily Newsletter, one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Knicks newsletter. So on today's show, we're going to talk about the Knicks losing to the Thunder 117 to 107. But they proved that they can hang, which is probably the most important thing. There was a lot of chatter coming into this one. Can the Knicks play a real contender? They've been beating up on a lot of bad teams. The schedule's about to get harder. Well, I would say that they can definitely hang. They just couldn't quite finish this game out, but it was definitely a valiant effort. We'll talk about the late game offense and why that kind of fell apart and ultimately doomed the Knicks after a really dominant, I think it's safe to say, dominant first half. And then at the end, we will talk about Wingstop, who was a big part of that early dominance. But Gavin, first off, big picture, the Knicks can hang with a contender. You know, they were up double digits. I think they remained double digits at the half against OKC.
Yeah, like 12 and a half. Yeah.
Yep. And looking great. I mean, honestly, going into half, I thought they were primed to kind of run away with this thing. And Josh Hart was playing fantastic. I mean, lots of hustle plays for him down the stretch of that second quarter. Mikal Bridges had 17 points, I believe, in the first half, which was, I mean, he was making every shot that you would want him to make. And I'm sorry, he had 19 points in the first half. OG Anunoby had 15 points in the first half, which, you know, he was cooking. He was 3 of 5 from 3, doing everything you wanted out of him. Honestly, I felt really optimistic going into the second half because Karl-Anthony Towns only had 8 points in the first half and Brunson only had 10. And both of them looked like they were shooting well, but they looked almost like they were being intentionally left off the game plan by the Knicks a little bit to get everybody else going and then bring out the full unit later. Unfortunately, as we saw, it kind of devolved into just leaning on Brunson a lot late, but I think we saw a blueprint of what this team can be against a contender, and I felt like they were very deliberate with picking their spots, picking their plays, picking who was bringing the ball down the floor, what actions they were setting early in this game, and it was a really, really good game plan early on.
Yeah, I thought the first half was, I've said this a bunch recently, about as good as any they played all season, given that it was against the best team in basketball so far this year, that second quarter in particular. I would put it up with the second quarter against the Wolves. And I can't remember that Nuggets game was the third quarter where they really separated. Someone can remind me in the comments, but it was a top 3 or 4 quarter they played all season. You said it, the 3 wings, the total was 46 points for the 3 of them in the first half, all doing different little brilliant things. And then down the stretch of this game, we talked about it a little bit pre-show, but I think fatigue would be the word I would go to. Because to your point, like they had so much diversity to their offense early in this game. They like I thought XJ, who was on this podcast and talked about similar concepts about like how you can go at Oklahoma City's defense. They took away a lot of Oklahoma City's ability to play passing lanes and get out in transition. They had just 6 turnovers in the first half, and a lot of it was because they played like the right kind of ISO ball that got it to Mikal Bridges in the post, and over again he was just feasting on these short turnarounds. They let OG score on some duck-ins. They let Cat seal on Jalen Williams after a quiet first quarter. Like Cat got going in the second quarter, and they were just very deliberate in terms of how they attacked this team. Oklahoma City, just like, again, not to toot, I'm not even tooting my own horn, I'm tooting XJ's horn. Like he said on the podcast, they started off with Hartenstein on Josh Hart, and the Knicks were very aggressive attacking that by using Josh Hart as a screener, letting him get downhill as a roller. As impressive as the offense was in the first half, the defense, I would say, was more impressive. Like Mikal Bridges, I think fair to say his best defensive half of the entire season. Like couple of like I'll go into detail later, but blocked SGA, like stonewalled him a few times. I thought Cat was picture perfect in his help, as good as he can be on his rim protection. OG Anunoby was a genius on that end of the floor. The Knicks did everything right. Oklahoma City is just an extraordinary team. They're going to bounce back. They start the third quarter on an 8-0 run. The Knicks, after 6 turnovers the whole first half, they have 3 in the first 2 minutes and 20 seconds of the third. The Knicks don't make their free throws. And then in the fourth quarter, it just looked like a tired team. And we're going to put out the second part of that episode with XJ tomorrow, where we get a little bit more into the depth issues as the Knicks lose the fourth quarter of this game, buoyed by some late Thunder free throws, 37-19. But this was not a game where I minded all 5 starters playing over 40 minutes. And by the way, the Knicks became the first team in the NBA to do that this season. First time any NBA team has done that since Golden State early last year. First time the Knicks have done that since 2013. So that's pretty crazy. And yet I don't mind it. Like this was the type of game where you want to push these guys to the brink, Tom Thibodeau. Go ahead. I do think you bore the punishment of, or you a better way to phrase it, you reap the downside of consistently playing all these guys 40 plus minutes, because come fourth quarter, Alex, like there was no juice. Like Mikal had SGA, like same exact matchup he was feasting on in the first half. No interest in posting up. OG Anunoby, he did hurt his elbow, but for a guy who was like making these crazy threes and transition dunks, he was silent. Cat, like, did not have the same defensive verve, was not aggressive trying to seal. And I don't know if some of this is that the Knicks, more than any other team in the NBA, kind of default to their pacifier late in games, which is give the ball to Jalen Brunson and clear out. But the strength of this team is the fact that they have 5, like all in their own way, but 5 like brilliant offensive players to attack a great defense with. And they made Oklahoma City's job easy because it was just sort of give the ball to Jalen Brunson. Oklahoma City's like, all right, if you're not going to aggressively like have Hart diving to the rim anymore, we're just going to blitz him. And Jalen, for the most part, I think played pretty well in the fourth quarter, hit some big shots, but then down the stretch, a couple bad turnovers, a couple of misses, but it was all on his shoulders. That's not fair to him. It's not fair to the rest of this team. I think it was mostly because they're tired, but that's something that even without Deuce McBride, even without Mitchell Robinson, they're going to have to figure out a way to have those guys fresh and have those guys engaged and have those guys, most importantly, have an aggressive attacking mindset in the fourth quarter. But all in all, my takeaway from this was not like, bummer, like Tibbs screwed up, the Knicks played too many minutes. It was that this is a team that can win a championship. Is against the best team, match them punch for 90% of the night.
Yeah, and not for nothing too, if we're talking about depth a little bit, like that was ultimately what won it for the Thunder, I think too. You had Isaiah Joe hit some good shots early that kept them, in the game, and was keeping things close in the first half as much as could be possible. And he hit 1 or 2 in the second half as well. He ended up with 7 points, but I don't know, every shot that he made just stood out to me. Like every time that he got it, I was like, even just driving to the hoop, whatever. But the real guy was Aaron Wiggins. I mean, they had a guy that they could count on to come in and hit clutch shots with fresher legs later down the stretch of the game. And, he ends with 19 points, but I think most of that came in the fourth quarter. He had, 15 of those in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, without him out there, going 5 of 5 and 4 of 4 from 3, they probably don't win this game, because that was really the back-breaking moment too, where they took this one was when Wiggins hit those 3s in a row, and all of a sudden the Knicks are down, and then they just weren't able to get back up off the mat. And it is what it is. You're going to run into that sometimes. But
yeah, I'll note though, Alex, some of that is like, again, the Knicks being tired. Like one of those threes
right.
was Josh Hart coming back in transition and having no idea who he was guarding, and that was the shot that tied it at 97. And the Knicks never had the lead from that point because Josh was spacey, but also again, when you're playing 40 minutes, you're gonna have some brain farts. So I think you can like say that he got hot and it was a little fluky, but also like that the Knicks blew some coverages.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the number one takeaway, if we're just going to wrap up this first segment in a bow about the Knicks kind of hanging with a team that's been the best or second best or whatever team in the NBA to this point, I would say probably the best. I don't. I think when the dust settles at the end of the season, I don't think the Cavs have a better record than Oklahoma City. So I'll just say it. I think they're the best team in the NBA right now. To hang with them, the Knicks showed, hey, we've got the championship level starting lineup. Like they've definitely developed a starting lineup that is probably the most dangerous offensive unit in the league right now, or if not close to it, and a defense that can be good enough to shut down an offense as good as OKC's. And yet at the end of the day, they kind of tired out, it looked like, and they needed that extra little bit of depth, and having a Deuce McBride might have made a difference. Having a Mitchell Robinson that could have kept the rebounding up in Cat's absence would have been helpful as well. Even just getting, I'm glad that they got 14 minutes out of Landry Shamet, and I thought that he played fantastic, but being able to get, more than 8 minutes out of Precious Achiuwa, more than 8 minutes out of Cameron Payne would have been really helpful in this game. And yet the bench just kind of, especially those two guys, Precious and Payne, just didn't really do much to differentiate themselves and prove that they needed to be out there more or could have been out there more and kept this game competitive. But we'll talk about some of the late game faltering in just a moment as well, going to a little too much Jalen Brunson ISO ball and why that ultimately kind of doomed the Knicks. So we'll get into that in just a moment. But first, we want to let you know about our friends over at FanDuel. And the NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. So I think FanDuel has a lot of different ways for you to pick up a win. I like betting on which players will score a touchdown or how many points each team will score. It's really thrilling. The number one thing I love to bet against, the New York Jets, baby. Love to bet against the Jets. Let's see where things are this week. So Miami, 1.5 point underdogs to the Jets at MetLife without Tua. It would stand to reason that they should not be favored in this game. And yet I'm probably betting Dolphins plus, just bet Dolphins money line. Don't even worry about betting the spread, because what's a 1.5 point spread? It's basically just money line at that point. Anyway, I would say Dolphins to win straight up. I just don't see any way that the Jets win this one because they stink. Unless they just want to keep tanking the draft position, in which case maybe they'll win it because they're great at that. Anyway, I don't know. I'm jaded. But if I actually placed all these bets against the Jets or for the Jets when I've said them these last 8 weeks or whatever, I'd probably win a lot of money. So feel free to take the advice or not. It's not professional gambling advice, but it sure is jaded Jets fan advice. Anyway, visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Gavin, we're back in, continuing to talk through this 117-107 loss to the Thunder. But I think closer than a 10-point spread would suggest. Again, the wheels kind of fell off late, and I think that's what we have to talk about now. Unfortunately, I think they went from playing really beautiful ball in the first half and having possessions where every player touched the ball, having possessions where you were getting multiple off-ball cuts towards the hoop and guys, diving inside to then, look for the first option, look for the second option, or pass it to the first option, who then would pass it to the second option. There was one really beautiful sequence. I think it was all three of Wingstop. I'm pretty sure it was Hart drove in, kicked it to Anunoby, who was coming in from the corner, who then just kind of snaked it around to Mikal Bridges, who got completely free around the other side. Just a gorgeous play there. Lots of that sort of stuff going on in the first half. And then second half down the stretch, and I mean, it's not a knock on Brunson. Like he he did admirable in this role for as much as he could, but it seemed like, especially down the stretch of the fourth quarter, once things started getting a little dicey, once OKC was like finally threatening to like take the lead and come all the way back and potentially, get in the driver's seat for this game, the Knicks just defaulted to, all right, we're going to get it to Brunson. We're going to run one screen with usually Hart. Strangely enough, they were looking to go to the Hart screen, I feel like, more in this game than the Cat screen. But we're going to run one screen, and then he wasn't, I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I wish they would have gone to Cat more down the stretch, because they had Jalen Williams on him pretty much all game. And I know that they were trying to blitz him late and whatever, but Cat was proving pretty good at drawing foul shots. Or at least he got 4 of them. I mean, there wasn't a ton of fouls called in this one, but I thought that he could have potentially exploited that a little bit, tried to do some rip throughs and get up towards the rim and, just use that explosiveness from the perimeter, or just shoot over one, if not 2 smaller defenders from the perimeter, because he's proven adept at that. But they weren't really looking for that at all. They were kind of just playing it was like the worst version of what their playoff offense is sometimes, which sometimes works out, but other times spectacularly doesn't, where they just lean on Brunson to be the alpha and the omega all at once. He struggled a bit down the stretch, struggled a bit in general in this game, but made some shots and was keeping them in it for the first couple minutes of this this venture, this attempt to play Jalen ball. And then it all fell apart. I don't think they were creative enough down the stretch, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was. I mean, this is probably the single. I don't know if I did a good enough job driving it home in the preview, but this was probably the single aspect I was most curious about. Like, what would the Knicks' fourth quarter offense look like? How would they handle switches late? And it looked like, if there's one disappointing thing to come out of this game, is that it looked awfully similar to the Cavs game, which was 7 games into the season down the stretch, where the Knicks were winning, like, against the other best team. I guess throw the Celtics in there too, but the other best team in the NBA that they've played all season, and like their offense died because it was a lot of Jalen ISO ball. But that time I kind of blamed it on Jalen being a little ball hoggy and attacking switches. This time, like, I don't think it had anything to do with Jalen. Like, I think no one really wanted the basketball. No one made themselves available. You would see, like, over and over again, the Knicks would get late shot clock because, excuse me, Jalen would be doubled and he would pass out of it. And you would see, like, there was a play where Josh Hart got a wide open straight on 3 and he shot well enough, like an open 3. He was 2 for 5 before that on my tracking on wide open 3s in this game. If you're shooting 40% of those shots, that's a great shot. Take the shot, Josh. And instead, he drives downhill, throws it out to Jalen. Bad pass. Jalen has to scramble to go and get it. Misses a 27-footer. There was another one where, like, he gets it to Mikal, and Mikal, 2 aimless dribbles, like sitting, staring, waiting for someone to help. Mikal had 19 points in the first half. Drive the basketball. Post up SGA. Instead, he gives it to Cat. Cat gives it to Jalen. Again, late shot clock. And for the first 7 minutes of the fourth quarter, like, Jalen was playing great. He was doing what he did all game, which was either like drive. If he's doubled, he made the right pass every time. If he's not doubled, and even sometimes when he was doubled, like, kick out that incredible footwork and just cook 2 guys and get back to your mid-range game, which has really come back to him after a slow start to the season. But it was just across the board, not enough guys engaged. And I'm with you. To me, the biggest sin is that they didn't get Cat more involved and give Oklahoma City credit. Like, the strategy of putting Williams on him ultimately worked out. Like, Cat does not shoot a single 3 in this game. As you noted, only 4 free throws in this game. And yet it felt like pretty much every time Cat got the ball on the inside, like, he was shooting over Jalen Williams, or he was getting fouled and maybe it wasn't getting called, but I would have kept trying to feed the post. And Oklahoma City did pivot early in the fourth quarter, and they started throwing much harder doubles at Karl-Anthony Towns. And they were basically saying, look, we're going to put a Hartenstein on Hart. He's going to flash down to Towns every time he gets the ball. You want to kick it out to Hart and have him shoot a 3 with one of our speedy guards running out on him, or you want to try to beat us with passing once you're tired? We can try that. And I think the Knicks got spooked by that. They didn't really trust Cat to make those decisions, even though we've seen he's capable of doing that. He's much better at doing that this year than he's been in the past. And I think because of that, Oklahoma City essentially took Cat out of the game. And at least offensively, he was pretty much a non-factor. I think he absolutely needs to get the ball down the stretch of games. And I think defensively, Alex, we can, I'll let you talk about it, but like the energy that was there in the first half, and I thought just the brilliance of Mikal, OG, and even Josh, like 2 different times rotating over to block SGA and help. They were a little bit more tired, and Oklahoma City consistently was just putting Brunson in ball screens. SGA would pass it off, playing 4-on-3, and they would beat the Knicks rotations with their passing.
Yeah, and I mean, to go back to the Cat point, I just went back and watched all of his makes in this game too.
They were
only
easy.
making
They were easy.
They were. I mean, only making the fourth quarter. He gets a post up on Jalen Williams and he takes him from 15 feet out, backs him down to 5 feet in, and then makes an easy hook over him. Like, I don't understand why I know it feels very NBA 2K, to just be like, why don't you just spam the crap out of that? Like, just keep giving it to him and backing down and going for baby hooks.
It was the doubles. They got spooked by the doubles.
I guess, which I don't know why you would get spooked by them on Cat, but not others. Because the other thing that stands out there too is that his passing was much better with a Jalen Williams on him too, because he can see directly over him. I mean, his whole head is over Jalen Williams's head. Yeah. I don't understand why you would be afraid of that. I think that I think they should have been going to it more. I think that's something that they need to work in so that they don't, to your point, you called it the pass fire a second ago. I don't go to Brunson so often. Like use some of the, and unfortunately they've used up all their, or at least their long stretch of bad team games here. But I do think they need to start working in some wrinkles where they say, hey, this can't just be the plan down the stretch of every game against a good team is just trying to trust you. And I'm not even saying, I don't want to come across like I'm saying that Brunson did something wrong, because I don't think he did. I think he did the best with the hand he was dealt, but it seems like the game plan was Brunson is just going to take lots of shots down the stretch. And there needs to just be something a little extra there, because I mean, it looked like he, much like everybody else, got a little gas down the stretch. All of a sudden the floater starts coming up a little short. He had to do 8 straight possessions against good defense where he was just essentially trusted with getting inside and getting a floater. It's that's hard work. That's hard work to do every single possession. And, I don't think it's fair to put that on him to have to do that every play down the stretch against the number 1 defense in the NBA.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you. And it is, I think it's somewhat a pecking order thing. It's somewhat that Mikal, for as well as he started playing, is still the Spurs game, that's the thing. It's hit or miss, right? Because the Spurs game, he was totally confident taking over the offense down the stretch. But I think a big part of that was that Jalen literally was not on the floor. And these guys, because he is the first captain in however long, they're going to defer to him. And I think Tibbs has to drive home. And I bet Jalen does, but he has to continue to drive home. You're Mikal freaking Bridges. You can go and get a bucket down the stretch. Or Karl-Anthony Towns, who I don't think it was on Cat. He wasn't really touching the ball that much. But when he did touch the ball, in defense of Tibbs, in defense of this offense, Cat was pretty passive, down the stretch of this game, the few times he got the basketball, and was looking to just get it back to Jalen. There has to be an attacking mentality. And again, I think some of that is mentality based. Some of it was just this team was wiped and understandably wiped, given how much they've all been playing and given the fact that this was played like a finals game. And if you all play over 40 minutes, look back, I think goes back to that Celtics Lakers series, or even that Cavs Warriors series. You get to a game 7 of an NBA finals, everyone is missing down the stretch, and Oklahoma City wasn't, because coming off a back-to-back, no one on their team played over 30 minutes yesterday. No one on their team played crazy minutes today, and it's because they have great depth, and it's going to be the challenge of the rest of this next season to solve that. But next I want to get into some of the good, because the first half, I feel like we've gone a little negative because that was the end of the game. The first half was about as good as it got for the New York Knicks, especially Mikal Bridges, especially OG Anunoby, especially Josh Hart. We're going to talk about it next on Locked On Knicks. But first, we're going to tell you about our good friends over at GameTime. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories last year was, and Alex, you were there too, was attending the Childish Gambino concert, we can bleep this word out, at the Barclays Center. And the energy and excitement was unforgettable. Now, GameTime has made it even easier to get tickets to your favorite events with their new feature, GameTime Picks. The feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets to, I mentioned this a few times with that Knicks Wizards game. I was in DC for the holidays. I said, let me go check them out. using the GameTime app. With GameTime picks, I found amazing deals and could even see the view from my seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in prices show the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, so I mentioned it at the end of the last segment, but I really like this. I think because we zoomed in on the fourth quarter was almost slightly more negative than I intended, because my reaction to this game, Alex, was mostly awe of how good this team was. And if I'm being honest, like we did pods on it, we talked about it. The first 15 to 20 games of the season, I know I made it pretty clear. I think I didn't see this team as a championship contender. I thought it would take a year. I thought it would take a summer to maybe like finagle some cap space and like find a bench addition. The last 10 games, the Nuggets game, the Wolves game, this game, like scream that this team is a championship contender, especially when we get to the playoffs and your bench becomes a little bit less important. But I'll let you start it off. I thought the trio of Mikal, OG, and Hart, like not just on offense, but on defense, like that was about as well as they could have played. And like, it just gave me a lot of confidence going forward that even against a team like Oklahoma City, that we have to emphasize is not just the best defense in the NBA this year. They're statistically one of the best defenses relative to league average in the history of the NBA. And the Knicks were able to find solutions. They were able to find ways to make them hurt, and were able to find ways to make them pay for putting some smaller defenders on the floor who are really good at playing passing lanes, are not so good at stopping freaks of nature like a Mikal Bridges or an OG Anunoby.
Yeah, I thought that they did a really good job of varying their coverages on who was covering SGA, who was covering Jalen Williams, whatever. Like there wasn't just one guy assigned to SGA the whole game. Like I thought that was sort of a big development for this team, because so often I think we've seen, and we've been pretty rough on Mikal Bridges throughout this season, but like a lot of games, especially early on, Tibbs was saying go out there for 45 minutes and just guard one dude. Like, and usually the guy with the ball in his hands almost the entire time. And I feel like in this game, they varied it more. They had OG Anunoby guard SGA on some possessions. They had Mikal guard him on some possessions. And I'm struggling to recall if there was some in particular, but I'm sure that Josh Hart ended up on him once or twice. And, I just felt like they were being more strategic. Like, again, it comes down to what I was talking about with the early part of the game, where it felt like everything was more deliberate. Like the whole first half felt more deliberate in this game. And it felt like they had a plan for everything, like that. Like Tibbs had looked at all the tape 5 times or whatever Tibbs says he watches every game, and was like, okay, I think the SGA SGA does not take a ton of threes, so we can afford to put OG on him, because he's also more slithery. He's not like a Tyrese Maxey. It's just going to like rip you every single time, and turn on the afterburners. So let's get OG on him sometimes. Let's make him feel, because OG's a defender that makes you feel him a little more. So let's get him a little more physical. But then right when he thinks he's got that figured out, we're going to switch Mikal onto him, who's going to just wingspan him to death and, just stay in front of him and just make his life hell that way. And I don't know. I thought they did such a good job, like in the first half, of not fully taking SGA out of the game, but taking him out of the game enough where he wasn't killing them. Like
he started 6 for 16, just for context.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, 16 points in the first half too. I mean, he still led them in scoring and whatever, but I feel like his impact wasn't felt in the way that it could have been. And then, they did do a little bit of their old tricks of like leaving Lou Dort wide open a lot of times, but he looked kind of, it was he has sort of that like Josh Hart to him, although Josh Hart's been shooting much better this year. So maybe like Josh Hart of last year or like the year prior to him, where if he makes a couple, you kind of just live with it, because like in general, he's the one guy that you can kind of like be like, okay, if it gets to him and it's a open 3, like I guess we can live with it. And he made 2 or 3, but I thought that was actually smart in terms of this game for him to be the guy that they would be like, okay, if he's the guy that beats us, then so be it. Like if it's Lou Dort, it's Lou Dort, and it's just his day. Unfortunately, that kind of became the case with Aaron Wiggins later, but he's more dangerous. So the same strategy applied to Aaron Wiggins late in this game, and then ultimately lost the Knicks the game. But yeah, I loved everything they were doing on defense. Then on offense, I mean, we've already kind of touched on it, but just beautiful basketball. I mean, those three guys in particular in the first half, I think they were the stars of the first half for the Knicks. I mean, Cat had 8 points on 4 of 6 shooting. Brunson had 10 on 4 of 7 shooting. But I mean, the other three guys outscored both of them. I mean, it was Mikal Bridges with 19, OG with 15, Josh Hart with 12. I mean, it was like cut fest. They were just moving constantly. Like nobody was stationary ever. It felt like they were being found for swing kick out threes. They were cutting to the hoop and getting easy buckets that way. OG had a couple dunks. I mean, we haven't really talked about it yet, but I would not be totally surprised if OG misses the next game, because I think the fall that he took is going to hurt real bad today. And they have a back-to-back today, obviously, so it's not ideal timing for him to have a hard fall like that, but went up at one point and just fell, I mean, directly onto his surgically repaired elbow. It's just like, why of all places? But really nasty fall there. But I thought he had a fantastic game. This was the game of Wingstop, honestly. Like at least the first half. I mean, they proved why the Knicks have invested the money, the draft capital, the young players they traded to get these guys. Like, it was all on display in this game, because that trio can shut down one of the best teams in the NBA and throw varied looks at the best wing players in the NBA. And I think that's their greatest value.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth with what you just said. Like, this was the premise of getting these guys. This is, as I referenced a lot, why teams wanted to trade 4 first-round picks for OG Anunoby. Why they wanted to trade, obviously the Knicks traded one more, but why they wanted to trade 4 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. It's because of how versatile they are, and because in a big game, like, this is how you can use them. And you can take 2 scorers as good as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams, who, for my money, in his second year in the league, or what is it, third year now? I don't know, but I think third year. Yeah, is already like a top 20 player in the NBA. And for a half, you can contain those guys. And it wasn't the full game. And I do think, particularly with Jalen Williams, he got going after OG hurt his elbow, because we said on the preview pod, like, if I were to build a defender to stop Jalen Williams, it would be OG Anunoby. And Jalen Williams had very little success going specifically at OG Anunoby until that elbow injury. But the defense was like, maybe not 10 out of 10. I'm going to say it was 9 out of 10 in the first half. And I think they did such a good job, to your point on Dort, like, strategically playing off the Thunder shooters. And I loved, like, late second quarter when Jalen Williams was out of the game, we saw like OG go full Sixers series mode and just became this like supersized predatory rover, and over again was just making these late stunts towards SGA. Like, I'm going to scroll down to it in my notes. His single best sequence in the game was like, he's on the wing, SGA is pulling up for a midi jumper on Mikal. OG, like the alien that he is, covers 5 feet in a second, alters the shot from SGA, runs the floor, Cat hits him. He drives into the lane, draws 3 defenders. Mikal runs with him, hits Mikal in the corner on a perfect pass for a 3. And we saw that like over and over again with OG, like late second quarter, early third quarter, defensive stops, getting out in transition, got a layup from Jalen Brunson. The play he got hurt on was just a vicious dunk that, again, was just like picture perfect. Like him, like he is my favorite type of player in that he is always really good, but in a big game, there's an extra 10% in reserve that he can go to. And we saw the exact same thing from Mikal Bridges, right? Same as that Spurs game early on this game. SGA on him, who's a great defender, but on this Thunder team that is stacked with incredible defenders, like he is probably the weak point. And Mikal said, like, bet I'm going at this dude. And like first play of the game, maybe gets away with an offensive foul, but pins him and gets a layup. Play after that, he was left, SGA was on an island, and Mikal, like early this year, he would just not be this patient, calmly backs him down and hits a reverse layup. Did the same thing to Isaiah Joe for a short fadeaway. Then got into his off-ball game, right? Like Cat was doubled. He flashed. He hit a 3. Another drive. Like he flashes to the left corner, gets a left corner 3. Like him and OG were both connecting from that left corner and were just picture-perfect outlets, because the Thunder, very similar to how the Knicks were guarding their stars, they were gambling everything on throwing multiple guys at Cat, multiple guys at Jalen, and over again, SGA made them pay. Not SGA. Mikal made them pay. OG made them pay. I said it before. I said it again. Mikal's defense on SGA, like as good as you can defend him in the first half. Like got blocks. At one point, this was even better than a block, Alex. He forced him to travel because SGA went up in the air to pass the basketball because Mikal took away the shot. And Mikal just sticks an arm out there. And with whatever his crazy wingspan is, SGA traveled because he literally didn't even want to try making the pass. Like it was suffocating defense. Hart was doing everything. He was making threes. I mentioned him as a roller. Like he rotated over to block SGA twice. Like it was just a full effort. And final thing I'll say, because I know you really like him and you're excited about him. I thought Landry Shamet in 14 minutes, the stats weren't really there. I thought he was like kind of the one guy off the bench where Campaign was getting toasted by AJ Mitchell and Precious. Like they were really weaponizing him, not being able to shoot and not being able to make quick decisions. Shamet was like kind of the one guy off the bench who looked like he belonged out there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I really liked his minutes. Had a nice steal at one point where he just kind of got an arm in there, and it was very, very Mikal-esque, very Wingstop-esque. Just getting that arm in there and forcing that steal. 2 assists as well. I think it's easy to forget. Like, I mean, he came in to the NBA with, I assume dreams of being a point guard because that's kind of like more what he played in college. And that was how he was played early on in his NBA career, and then sort of has developed into more of a 3-and-D wing type. But I think that he showed some good passing. He was cutting well. I mean, he's been surprisingly more aggressive at getting towards the rim than I expected as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's kind of just playing like a slightly discounted version of the way that Mikal and OG play. Obviously not as talented as those guys, or he'd be averaging 30 minutes a game somewhere and making more than the veterans minimum. But like, I think that any given night you can lean on him to play like 15 minutes and give those guys whatever rest you can. Unfortunately, I do think that they were really missing Deuce in this game. Like Campaign, I did not think was very good in this one, which is a shame because we saw him have one of his best games of the season earlier this week. But I don't think that he was up to snuff in this one. He just looked uncomfortable. The ball pressure was getting to him. He couldn't seem to like generate any separation to then create opportunities to get assists or whatever. And then, like you said, they kind of hunted Precious in this game as well, took advantage of the fact that he was not able to make shots, and he's just not dangerous enough on any given night. They do need some help with this bench. Unfortunately, I think just having Deuce back would have been almost enough. I think if you could have just had that extra 20 minutes out there of him just playing good defense, even if the shot wasn't there, not having them feel underwater on defense without the starters out there, without the wing stop guys out there. You could throw Deuce out there and he can incredibly kind of do what Josh Hart does for a little bit, or what Mikal Bridges does for a little bit, even if he's undersized. So I think that was a big difference for them. The fact that they ran a very short 8-man rotation ultimately came back to bite them. Getting Deuce back, hopefully whatever issue with his knee sorts itself out and he's able to find some sustained health this year, because it feels like it's just been kind of a specter looming over him at all times of like he might just land wrong and then have to miss a couple games again. Hopefully that gets sorted soon. Hopefully Mitchell Robinson's rehab is going well and he's back soon. But all in all, I think that's what it comes down to. If I want to just tie this up with a bow, this whole game, the Knicks starting lineup can hang with a championship contender. Their best version of themselves can blow out a championship contender, which they were doing in the first half of this game. But ultimately, if they want to win a championship this year or in the future, the depth needs to get a little better, whether that's the guys just playing better or whether that's them finding an upgrade somehow. The depth needs to be better. And that's sort of the thing that differentiated them in this game. And hopefully it's something that they'll be able to figure out by the end of the season and go on a deep playoff run, because I think that these guys really do have a chance to potentially be dark horses to come out of the East this year.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better than that. Get well soon, Mitchell Robinson. Get well soon, Deuce McBride. OG Anunoby, rest for 10 games if you need to. My God, just get that guy healthy for April. Until then, he's Alex. I'm Gavin. We'll be back with a special Sunday episode, second part of my conversation with XJ. We recorded it before the Thunder game, but it is maybe even more relevant after the Thunder game. I'll let you find out why for yourself. And then Monday morning, we'll be back with the Bulls recap. But until then, we'll talk to you very, very soon. Have a great weekend from us at Locked On Knicks.